Now, I would say, you may not agree with me on this, but I'm going to make a couple statements here, and you can see if you follow along. But I think in America, I think that most people tend to think of themselves first. It is part of living in an individualistic culture, and most people look out for number one. That's one thing they taught us in the armies. You look out for number one. Make sure that you're safe, and then you can make sure others are safe. People tend to do what they need to get ahead, and sometimes when they get ahead, they forget the people who helped them get there. I know there's a lot of accusations that usually go against politicians all the time because they get elected on a certain platform, then they're unable or unwilling to follow through on the promises that they made that got them elected. Now, I guess we really shouldn't be surprised if most people tend to act that way. If most people are looking out for themselves and maybe forget some of the things that they said they were going to do or some of the promises they made, if that tends to be the norm, then why would we be shocked if those in leadership are doing the same thing that those in the culture are doing? Now, have you ever wanted something so bad that you're willing to make some promises? How many kids are, try to make promises that if they got this, they would do this, this, or this? Some of you may do that with your prayer life. God, if you just help me out of this problem, I'll always be at church, and I'll even add Sunday school on top of that, whatever the promises may be. Then after you get what you wanted, or you get through whatever the issue is, you forgot about the promises that you made. Now, I will be honest, and I'm actually more surprised when someone follows through with what they say they're going to do than I am shocked when they don't follow through with what they're going to do. And I'll just give you some examples. If every person who told me in a conversation that they were going to be coming to church that Sunday, we wouldn't have room in the pews. So they made a comment, they said they were going to do something, they don't follow through. Again, not shocked. It's our culture. It's our society. It's the way people tend to be. Someone mentioned last week about the sign up for my book study. He said, we have 7 people signed up for your book study. I said, yeah. I said, let's see how many finish. I think since I've been here, I've lost half the people by the end of every book study I've done. We know it happened on New Year's resolutions, right? How many people make commitments, make promises that they're going to do something and they're going to change, and how quickly do they forget? You probably know people that, in your head, you're like, I know I can't rely on them because they say, they're going to help out, and at the last minute they bail, or they just, they start and don't finish. One thing, I've been here, it'll be 7 complete years November 1st. So when you work in a place after a while, you know which people get things done. You know which people say they're going to do things, and it's not going to get done. You probably had the same thing in your workplace. The people who get things done, or who say they're going to do something and follow through, they tend to be the people who get promoted. Because the owners or the bosses know they are dependable, they're reliable. So when I think about this, and that I am more surprised when somebody actually follows through than I am when they don't, I think it's kind of a sad state of our reality. And I don't know if everybody else has seen it, or if, most people think I'm cynical. I may be a tad, but it's something that I've noticed. And so I'm wondering if anybody else has seen the same type of phenomena in our culture. Now, I think when people don't follow through on the things that they promise, it is obvious show of the shortcomings of our society. Now, I try very hard to do whatever I say I'm going to do. My wife will attest, I'm kind of obsessive about getting something done when I say I'm going to do it. A lot of the people who are on council in the office, they know I have things done way ahead of time. Because the last thing I ever want to be is the bottleneck. I don't want to be the one holding people up because they're waiting for me. So I always try to get things done way ahead. I don't like owing somebody or being indebted to somebody. So I try to follow through with anything I say I'm going to do as soon as I can possibly do it. I always pay off any loans or anything I did early. I just, I don't like the idea that I owe. And so I become obsessive over stuff like that. And so I don't try to put myself in those positions that often. But we're going to look at the end of a story where a person was supposed to follow through with something and took them a few years before they realized their shortcomings. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 41, verses 9 through 13. Genesis chapter 41, verses 9 through 13. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." Now we see in the first verse that we read today, the chief cupbearer said to the Pharaoh that he was reminded of his shortcomings. And actually that's what led me to this whole sermon idea and this whole message, was that verse about the cupbearer being reminded of his shortcomings. I think at some point, everyone in their life has to realize what their shortcomings are. And we all have them. So for us to truly understand what's going on in this story, because this is the end, we need to go back to the beginning of the story and see what the cupbearer is talking about and why did it come up now. So a couple years earlier, the Pharaoh was angry with his servants, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. If you don't know what the cupbearer is, think of it the wine taster. He's the one that tests the wine and makes sure it's not poisoned. I guess it's a prestigious job till you get to one bad glass, but up until then, so chief cupbearer, chief baker, they were both thrown into prison. They happened to be in the same prison where Joseph was wrongly imprisoned, because if you remember that story, Potiphar's wife made a false accusation that Joseph tried to seduce her, so he got thrown into prison. All three of them are in the same prison. The chief cupbearer and the chief baker, they both have dreams during the night. And then the next morning, they're stressing out. They're stressing out about these dreams because no one seems to be able to interpret their dreams. So Joseph hears them stressing out and talking about no one's able to interpret their dreams. And Joseph tells them, aren't dreams up to God to interpret? And that he would listen to their dreams, and then he would ask God for the interpretation. So he hears the dreams of the cupbearer, and he tells him that in 3 days that he would be restored to his position for the Pharaoh, that he would be back to being the wine taster or the chief cupbearer for the Pharaoh. So the baker heard the favorable interpretation, so the baker told his dream to Joseph. And Joseph told the baker that in 3 days that he would be hanged. So Joseph told the cupbearer that he'd be restored to his position. And he says, when you're restored to your position, cupbearer, remember me. Remember me, Joseph, and ask the Pharaoh for my release, because I have done nothing that deserves for me to be in this dungeon. So that's what he asked of the cupbearer, and it was what the cupbearer was supposed to do when he was restored to his position. 3 days later, everything happened as Joseph said it would. The cupbearer was restored to his position for Pharaoh, and the baker was hanged. But the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. The cupbearer was back in his position of honor and completely forgot what he was supposed to do for Joseph. He got what he wanted, got his dream fulfilled. He's back doing his position. Forgot the one who told him how the dream was going to be interpreted. And so he got what he wanted. He forgot about everyone else. Does that sound familiar at all? It may have happened in your life. It may have been something you have done, where you realize, oh man, I was supposed to do something for so-and-so. Oh, it's been too long now, and you let it go. Now, a little over 2 years later, Pharaoh is losing sleep over dreams that he's having. He called all the magicians, all the wise men, all the seers, to have them interpret his dream, and nobody could do it. Voila, alas. After these 2 years, the cupbearer finally remembers. And what Joseph did for him, so he now tells that story to the Pharaoh. He says, hey, I know someone that, 2 years ago, when you threw me in prison with the baker, this guy was able to interpret our dreams, and I was restored. Everything happened exactly how he said. And so he's telling the Pharaoh this story about Joseph, who, because the cupbearer didn't do anything, is still in prison. So if you know the story of Joseph and Pharaoh calls Joseph, brings Joseph out of prison. He tells him his dream. And if you remember the story, the dream's about the famines that are about to strike Egypt. 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. And because Joseph was able to tell the Pharaoh everything that was going to happen with that, Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of storing up food to help them get through the famine. Had them bring in the abundance, put it in storehouses, so that when the famine came, they could start selling the food back out. And Joseph was elevated to basically second in command. The only person he was below was Pharaoh in all of Egypt. And through this, Joseph was able to save many, many people. He was able to help Egypt gather great wealth. And Joseph was even able to save his family from starvation, along with a lot of people in the area. It is part of the story of Joseph rising back to the power that God had planned for him all along. Now, I don't know how many of you did my teaser video, and I asked you kind of dig a little deeper into this, because the easiest answer, and I'll have that in my closing, but as this sees the story of Joseph rising back to power, I was focusing, as I read this, on the shortcomings of the cupbearer and how that relates to all of us, whatever our personal shortcomings are. And if you're my age, 60 years old, you kind of learn what your shortcomings are. You know what you're good at, you know what you're not good at. Focus on what you do well, you kind of stay away from the things you maybe not do so well. So the cupbearer remembered Joseph. He failed to remember Joseph when he was first restored to his position. As a matter of fact, he let Joseph sit in the dungeon for 2 more years. Now, the cupbearer only remembers Joseph because Pharaoh was struggling with his own dream issues. Now, we may say that, if Pharaoh struggling with his dream issues, this helped the cupbearer remember his shortcomings. How many of you have ever forgot something and then something triggers that? And to help you remember, oh man, that's right, I was supposed to do so-and-so or do something. So we could say that the Pharaoh's dreams helped trigger the cupbearer's memory and remember his shortcomings. Or maybe the cupbearer sees an opportunity to get even in the better good graces of Pharaoh by helping him out with his dream issues, by bringing in someone he knows who can interpret dreams. My guess is probably a little bit of both. I think the dream issue probably triggered the cupbearer, but it doesn't hurt. I have a guy that can solve. I know a guy, right? How many of you like that answer? You need to get something to get fixed? I know a guy. Well, the cupbearer knew a guy. And that was helped Pharaoh through the dream issue. It helped Egypt, get through the famine. But based on my opening today, what I really wanted to look at was the actions of the cupbearer, and to determine if we may have been or maybe we are guilty of similar actions in our own lives. It could be our personal lives. It could be our work lives. Maybe even our ministry lives. You worked with someone to get ahead, or you moved up and then you forgot them and all the things they did to help you there. We can sometimes get too busy looking forward that we never look on how we got there. We never look back. It would be a shame if our paths to success are filled with footprints all over the backs and heads of the people we walked over to get them. Joseph patiently waited for God to bring him out of the dungeon, and eventually he was placed second in command of all Egypt. So my question is, how does this story resonate with you today? It could be looked at a few different ways. You could say, we could look at the cupbearer and he had his own personal agenda to get back in the good graces of Pharaoh and he forgot about Joseph. We could say, if you did my teaser video, I said, please don't use this one. It's an easy out. It eliminates discussion. We could say that God had a plan and gave Pharaoh those dreams when he was ready for Joseph to save the country from the famine. And he had a cupbearer in the right place to tell Pharaoh about Joseph. That is a good answer because everything happens in God's plan. But what if God really had the plan for the cupbearer to tell Pharaoh when he got released? And the cupbearer didn't do it, the whole free will thing. So God had to find another way for his plan to turn out. Because if we have free will, that means different choices would have different results. In the end, God's plan is going to come in fruition. What if God originally wanted Joseph released 2 years earlier? It's discussion points. That's what my Sunday school class is all about, is discussing these possibilities. So I just got focused on the shortcomings of the cupbearer and realized that he had forgotten Joseph once he realized he got what he wanted, being restored as a cupbearer. But we also realize as we talk about this that these shortcomings are pretty common in today's world, and we need to be aware of it so we can try and eliminate those shortcomings in our own lives. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Lord, as we look at the story, and we look at the cupbearer and his fate and how he had forgotten to do something that he said he was going to do. How many of us can look at our own lives and realize that we forgot to do things that we said we were going to do? A very simple one, someone asks you to pray for something and you forget to pray for it. A lot of times people say, I'll pray for that. And they never actually pray for it. I pointed out people who said they're going to come to church and, never show. So how often do we just quickly say something? Maybe you're just trying to get off a phone call or you're just trying to get someone away from the front door or whatever it may be, that where we say things that we really have no intent to follow through on. We make a joke about New Year's resolutions, but a lot of those things are things we say we're going to do or promise we're going to do and try, and then we don't follow through with. Are you known as someone who volunteers for something or say you're going to do something and at the last minute bail, or you don't show up, you don't follow through, whatever they may be? People see patterns, and when we have shortcomings, we need to recognize what our shortcomings are, because I can guarantee you the people around you already know what they are. So Lord, help us self-examine, look in the mirror, and figure out where we need to be better. Not just so the people around us like us, but so we are better servants for you. So we are reflecting you in all of our actions and all of our words and deeds. Lord, give us that strength in all your glory. Amen.